Hey, this is Steve in Dallas, Texas. It's Saturday morning, my friend, and you are listening to Light Talk.
Good morning. This is Stan in Gainesville, Florida, and today we are discussing the return of Tungsten, church lighting, dimmer doubling, and what's so wrong with the telegraph anyway, all on Light Talk.
And this is David coming to you from the beautiful Belmont Shore neighborhood of Long Beach, California. And if you don't already know, you are listening to Light Talk, and we are the Lumen Brothers.
That sounds like something from a musical, the way you did that note.
It's the Lumen Brothers.
That's very sort of Cole Porter-esque, maybe.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 208. You know, pretty soon we're going to have our anniversary show. We got to figure out what the hell we're going to do for that.
Cake. I like cake.
Cake, yeah, cake is good. Chocolate. I'm a big fan of lemon. Can somebody bake something with lemon?
No, lemon doesn't work in cake. That's
no. You don't know my wife.
Like
She's amazing.
Okay, all right. The closest thing is key lime pie.
Key lime is nice.
So anyway, welcome everyone, and we are back again, and we hope that you had a great week. Lots going on. But before we get started today, first we have letters to Light Talk Central. Today we have a letter from Curtis Flats from Beaver Junction, Arkansas. Have you guys ever been to Beaver Junction?
It's up near Hot Springs.
Yes, it's up there in that area. And, you know, it's incredible because I've been there. Like many years ago, I visited Beaver Junction while on a cross-country trek with my good friend Art Sandoval. We stopped to watch the famous Beaver Junction Iditarod. They actually use armadillos to pull these little wagons filled with 10 pounds of manure. And watching the little legs pumping at speeds toward 4 miles per hour. It's a sight, man. It's crazy.
Why would they not use beavers? Why do they use armadillos?
I don't think there are any beavers in Beaver Junction. That's a whole nother story.
They've probably all been eaten. You know, Lewis and Clark came through there.
But there's this famous armadillo breeder in Beaver Junction. His name is Ray Kravitz. And you should check out his bio when you have a chance. You know, it's amazing that this town is called Beaver Junction. It should be called Armadillo Junction. In fact, I don't even think they have beavers in Beaver Junction.
There's beavers everywhere in Arkansas. Come on.
In Arkansas? Okay. Anyway, Beaver Junction. I digress. Back to the letter. Okay, so here's our letter from Curtis Flats. Dear Luminoids, I am writing to express my utmost disdain at last episode's sponsor, Lumerotica from Love and Light Products. I do not understand why anyone would need such devices to keep their relationships alive while they're on the road. When I'm on the road, I can always find distraction from my crewmates or from whatever's left over from the party last night. Sure, some of the crew finds a moral pleasure in crazy hijinks, but like Colonel Jack D. Ripper from my favorite Stanley Kubrick movie, Dr. Strangelove, I do not avoid women, but I do deny them my essence. In my partners and my opinion, this only makes our relationship stronger. And besides that, let's be real, nothing really needs to glow in the dark, especially a crescent wrench. On another subject, your report on the Grammys left a lot to be desired. I want to see more of the Haim sisters and less of Bruno Mars. Who does Bruno Mars think he is anyway? Is he a hip-hop artist, a jazzer, a soul artist, or a rock and roller? I am just confused. But leave it to my darling Taylor Swift to steal the show. I have never seen anything so beautiful on the roof of a hut since my half-cousin tossed that pepperoni pizza onto my roof a few years ago. Even after a few days and a quick dust-off, it was good eating. So I am seriously considering canceling my subscription and never listening to your crappy podcast again. And please send me the link for Love and Light products. Your POE Anon shaman, Curtis. So, Curtis was not pleased with our show. But I have a question about this POE Anon shaman. Do you guys have any idea what that is?
Not a clue. I'm still thinking about why there aren't beavers in Beaver Creek.
Well, that's a whole nother story. But POE, that actually, I believe it has to do with, and he mentioned Stanley Kubrick and Dr. Strangelove.
Power over Ethernet.
That's a good guess, but it's not. POE in that movie stands for purity of essence.
I don't know what that means.
Well, you got to watch Dr. Strangelove.
It can mean many things to many people.
I'll post the link on our Light Talk Facebook page to show everyone the scene where you'll understand what purity of essence is.
You know, I read an interesting blurb about Dr. Strangelove, a bit of information about George C. Scott in that movie. And I read that Stanley Kubrick said, you cannot make this too big, too crazy, too insane. And
he did.
Well, actually, the bit of trivia is that he felt that was completely wrong. So Kubrick said, look, let's do it my way one time and just go nuts, and then we'll shoot it again your way. So apparently they double shot everything that George C. Scott did. And he was quite surprised when he saw the finished product, because he stepped back from it and said, this is going to ruin me.
No, he was one of the stars of that film. He was fantastic.
He was brilliant.
Yeah, incredible. Great film, by the way. For people who haven't seen it, it is an American classic. So Steve has our first question.
Johnny from Boston writes, do you think Tungsten will make a comeback? The question here are the days of Tungsten over? And I don't think so. I think LED does not live up to what Tungsten is capable of doing. And I think where we see that is in cinema. I think the Tungsten light is going to rule there for a long time. I think it's just great. What else? It's perfectly color balanced to 100 CRI. These are just beautiful, beautiful lights that LEDs at this point are not capable of emulating. So no, I don't think Tungsten has left, and I don't think it's going to leave, no matter what everyone says.
But the question is, do you think Tungsten will make a comeback? I believe what Johnny is asking, do you think we're going to see more Tungsten fixtures being manufactured and more designers using them?
Well, I'm going to argue it never went away. It only went away in a small little sliver of the industry.
I don't know. There's a lot of LED in rock concerts.
I don't know. A 20K Fresnel, a 10K Fresnel, a 5K.
I totally disagree with Steve for a change.
Okay, what is it, Stan?
All right. First of all, Steve mentions CRI. I've told you, gentlemen, before, forget about CRI.
4 years.
It's from the,
For 4 years
it's
you've
from
been
the 20th
saying this.
century. You got to be talking TM30 or you don't know where you are. Get out of the CRI world, first of all. Move on.
I have no idea where I
Two,
am.
have you been to Light Fair? Okay, let's just talk about the industry. And I haven't been in about 3 years. But let's just talk about the lighting industry at large. Do you see a lot of Tungsten at Light Fair? No, you don't. You see you see almost zero. Maybe in some special booths where they have artisan filaments in bulbs for decorative purposes made out of tungsten. So if the entire industry of architectural lighting, where most of the lights in the world are employed, are not using tungsten, trust me, it's gone. It's going, gone. Now,
Bumpkus.
wait, I'm not
Bumpkus.
finished.
He calls Bumpkus already.
Three simple questions.
Wait a minute,
here.
I'm not done.
Well, I think you're done.
No.
Let me just ask a question there. Tungsten lights are built like tanks. LED is not. Tungsten is built to last through the years. I mean, look at Mo Richardson. Look at Bardwell McAllister.
That's a housing,
Who the
not a
hell is
light
that?
source.
Think about
Steve, you're on a losing
price.
battle here,
Think
man.
about the price. Tungsten fixtures will always be cheaper than LEDs.
Sure.
Yeah. A few years from now, you're going to be
Sure,
eating
and
those
there'll
words.
never be enough memory in a light board to run moving lights because it's too memory intensive and memory is too expensive. Please.
Okay. Are you done, Stan?
No.
Okay, continue. Continue, my friend.
I mean, this is like a candle's going to make a comeback. Candles, we still use them. I like to have dinner under candlelight. There's nothing quite like it. A soft flick. Let's talk about sound, okay? Are we giving up on digital sound and we're going back to is the reel-to-reel going to make a comeback? Yeah. I think some people, I just bought an amplifier, okay? It's a Class A B
It's a shit
amplifier.
one, right? You
Old
bought a shit
school-
amplifier.
I bought a shit. That's right. It's shit Vidar. It's what it's called.
That's
okay.
right.
But here's the thing. That's a Class AB amp. I've done all this reading. It's linear. It's old school. It has a particular sound. Most people don't have those anymore. Audiophiles, apparently, some people just love it. So is tungsten going away 100%? No, I agree. Is it all of a sudden going to dominate and be the primary light source? No way, no how.
What is the rawest light you can get? Tungsten, an open-faced tungsten. That is just stunning.
Sure.
I'm telling you, they're not going away in film or video. They're still going to be there.
I'm still riding to work on my horse.
Are you guys done?
I'm finished.
I think
I'm kaput.
I'm kaput. No more. I speak no more.
Kaput and out of it. Signing off, 10-4, over and out, finished.
Okay. All right. I agree with both of you.
Oh,
I
David
really
is
do.
walking the line.
You both have
come
good
on,
points.
take a position, that Steve used to say.
Okay,
Take a position.
Let me explain why I agree with both of you. I agree with Steve that nothing is more beautiful than a tungsten lamp, and that you cannot recreate that because it just it happened to me on My Fair Lady. I had a bunch of really super high quality LED fixtures in the front, state of the art fixtures, and I had to replace them. Well, not replace them, but I had to supplement them with 2K Fresnels just so I can get the correct color.
I'm not saying they're going away forever.
Okay. I'm just supporting Steve. Supporting Stan. Stan is absolutely right. I was at Light Fair about 3 years ago, and there was not one tungsten lamp in that entire place. It was all either fluorescent, mostly LED, and there were also some short arc lamps.
Yeah,
too.
electricity, the cost of electricity is going to drive, efficacy is always going to drive the day, unfortunately, in terms of quality. But,
So I don't think tungsten's going to make a comeback, but I do think it's going to be with us for a while.
Sure.
Okay. So I think you're both correct.
I wouldn't argue that point. There's a lot of infrastructure to change. It's the reason DMX isn't going away because there's so much cable out there.
Really?
Right.
If anything should go away, it's DMX.
Okay.
I mean, come on. I'd rather DMX go away than tungsten.
Well,
for
Stan
God's
has
sake.
the next question.
Yes, Stan does.
Well, that's me, and I've got the next question. Somebody named Cricket in New Jersey who's squawking wants to know whatever happened to ETC and the dimmer doubling idea.
I remember that. Dimmer doubling.
Well, the dimmer doubling never really went away. I mean, it happened, and there were certainly installations with it, and many schools have the appropriate cap, the 77 volt cap, and the 77 volt lamp. I'm not really sure if ETC is still installing it or selling it, but it was kind of a deal. Actually, let's see what they say. Dimmer doubling, here it is. And it doesn't say it's discontinued. So I would imagine if somebody was really into tungsten, getting back to the earlier question, and they wanted to double the amount, reduce the amount of circuits in half, or double the amount of dimming they could do, and they were a full tungsten hall somewhere on the planet, they could use dimmer doubling. So as far as I know, it's still available, unless they have made it go the way of the dodo, as Steve says. What do you guys know?
I know nothing about dimmer doubling except when it came out. And you had to buy special twofers for them. That's not
Cricket, that's the problem. You had to buy special lamps, special twofers for them.
Yes.
And once people started looking at the LED, they went to relays. So people foolishly pulled out all their dimming systems and went to relay systems, and now they're desperately trying to buy dimmers again.
You know what? On that point, let me say there is a product that people should be aware of, and I believe that ETC makes it. I'll tell a short story. We were looking at a facility, a roadhouse, that we were going to renovate. And of course, we were promoting the idea of a conversion. We would reduce the amount of copper that had to be used in the job, amount of wire distribution and such, to move to LED. And the staff was a little nervous about adjusting to that kind of methodology. And they said, well, some of the road shows are going to demand tungsten, particularly dance companies, for sidelight. So how would we handle that if we made that move? And so we had a suggestion. There are these little, I think it's an ETC product. It's a small dimmer that comes on a C-clamp, and you just hang it on the pipe next to the fixture, and DMX in, DMX out, and you plug your light into it, and you give it power. And so you could put a standard dimmer anywhere you need to, even in a facility that would be 100% LED. As long as you've got DMX and you've got AC power somewhere, it made that possible. So on that project, we were going to add 24 of these portable dimmers that you just hang next to the fixture and off
I'm sorry,
you go.
why were you going to add them?
Because the company, the Roadhouse, felt that they were for an unknown period of time into the future, and this was maybe 5 years ago, that there would be companies that would require.
I think you used the word demand. They would demand the quality of tungsten light.
Yeah, they would demand.
So what does that have to do with dimmer doubling?
Nothing.
I think dimmer doubling was like the VCR, and then Betamax, and then the DVD, and then Blu-ray. I think it had its moment in time. It seemed like an incredibly good idea when they popped it out.
Sure,
But
sure.
technology moved on. So I think it was a short gap solution to a problem.
It was actually a pretty good idea. Whoever came up with that idea, it was an ETC, right? Wasn't that an
Yep.
ETC product?
I think so.
But it did require some commitment to specialized devices.
You know, when you require a 77-volt lamp, that means that pretty much you can only have ETC equipment in the building.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, cyc lights are gone, Lecos are gone, Fresnels are gone, park gowns are gone. I mean, it's a huge commitment to do that.
I think to Steve's point, I think there's a danger in any kind of hitching your wagon to anything that is proprietary these days.
Like Kliegel? No, remember the old days?
I had like a software that people say is the standard, and this is the only one we're going to use.
I know what he's talking about.
You know where I'm going. You paint
I know where
I
you're
just think
going.
you paint yourself into a corner. Same thing. You go to dimmer doubling, and from one company, this was a problem before DMX. DMX, remember Steve's interview, interoperability. Right, that's what you needed, interoperability. It was actually, and people were afraid because if I have to use people use my dimmers with your light boards, it'll ruin my business. But in fact, it did the opposite. It expanded the business. So the notion of proprietariness and hitching your wagon to one company or one thing in a society that sort of thrives on competition, I think is sort of dangerous.
Well, I mean, just look at that Kliegel Fresnel. I mean, I could take a Strand Fresnel or a Major Fresnel or an L&E or an Altman and interchange all the parts. With Kliegel, no. Special in, special C-clamp, special bolts. I mean, that was just like, if you buy us, you're committed for the rest of your life.
That's right. And then they went the way of the dinosaur, right? So, and I'm saying the same thing about, software too.
We're not mentioning any names.
I'm not mentioning any names, but I'm just saying, if you commit yourself to one thing that is proprietary, I just think it's dangerous.
All right, Retta from Berlin writes, can you discuss pitfalls in church lighting? I am expanding my career and I want to work with churches. Well, couple things. First of all, I've done a lot of work with churches, both on production side and also in consulting for their lighting systems. But can you discuss pitfalls? I wonder what that means.
I know a pitfall.
Something you fall into.
Never fall into the pit. I'll tell you that right now.
Put out the ghost light.
What do you think it is, Steve?
Well, I mean, again, I've only read this, and I think I read this in Church Production Magazine.
Yeah, that's the magazine that I write for.
And I think it was written by you, actually.
I have no doubt about that.
I think one of the pitfalls is maybe you don't have one client. You may have a committee.
Oh,
you may
yes.
have half a dozen church elders.
Actually, I must tell everyone right now that some of the nicest people I've ever worked with were church people. Absolutely. I've probably worked over my career with maybe a couple of dozen churches. I've even lit at the Southern Baptist Convention, believe it or not. I worked for them for 1 year. Again, great people, and they listen to you and they respect you. And they know what their limitations are. So they will respect your point of view because you are the expert. How many clients have you had you think they know more about lighting than you have?
I don't work for those people.
Yeah, exactly. But they're out there, and that's the problem. So absolutely. I think going into church lighting, working with churches is a great way of
Well, get me in because I haven't had any luck.
Okay. They also pay very well, by the way.
Get me in. I haven't had any luck.
One thing that Steve did mention was you usually work for a committee. They're the elders of the church, usually the pastor or priest, and usually there are entertainment, dance, and music ministers. That's usually the person I really connect with since I'm a musician and they're musicians as well. Yeah, I love working with them. And I did this huge show for them every Christmas time for a number of years in Florida at the First Baptist Church of Fort Lauderdale. This show is so popular. First of all, I think the church holds close to 4,000 people, and the sanctuary was actually built to be a theater just for the show. And I did that show for, I don't know, about 10 years. And then my assistant, Helena Kuka, she was my associate by then, took over, and she's been doing the show ever since I left it 20 years ago. So obviously, you like working with these people if you're continuing working with them for 10, 20 years. So yeah, absolutely.
Seriously, we'd love to do some spiritual venues. I think it's beautiful and there's a lot of heart in those places, like you say, David. Would love to do it. I just haven't had the opportunity.
Well, like every other bit of architectural lighting, you're either going to be working on a new building or a retrofit or renovation. Sometimes the renovations are much more interesting than the new buildings.
Yeah, we prefer to do renos ourselves.
Yeah, It's very challenging. It really is. And you really need to find out what their style is,
and what their program is.
Doing. Yeah, their program and how the pastor, priest, or rabbi address the congregation. If they use video a lot, everyone uses video differently in churches.
Yeah.
Sometimes they want to use more video and they want to bring in an expert for that. Yeah. So I come in and I help them with that as well. So,
our colleagues who do acoustics, they do a lot of churches.
Absolutely.
And, they try to get us in on them sometimes, but oftentimes it ends up the architects kind of feel like they know what they're doing, and they'll work with a rep or something, and they don't necessarily lend themselves towards consultants.
So one more thing before we move on to our sponsor. Retta, if you want to get into church design, I have two suggestions. One is find a church that you like and start going to it and checking it out and see a lot of different churches if you can. See what the different styles of worship are. And see some modern churches and see some more traditional churches, and get involved in an architectural lighting company, because architectural lighting companies do a lot of work in churches.
You are listening to Light Talk, and today Light Talk is sponsored by...
From across the mighty Pacific, here comes Illegitimate Panda. You asked for it, and the Panda has heard your call. Faster, smaller, and with just the right price tag. And now, the sixth release in the Crippled Dragon line, the 660. The 660 faster than a Sharpie. The 660 better color mixing than the VL2600. The 660 less expensive than the most reasonable of movers. The 660 is the mover, meant for small clubs, community theaters, and churches that cannot afford to pay the big name guys with all those big name prices. Just what is that price, you might ask? $189. Oh! That's right, just $189, and those are Canadian dollars, my friends. A reasonable person might think we are crazy. How can the Panda sell a mover for only $189? Well, we call it the 660 for a reason. Sixth in production and guaranteed to work 60% of the time. Do you really use those movers of yours 100% of the time? No. So why pay for the 40% of the time you probably will never need anyhow? Just plan your tech around the 60% of the time the 660 works. Illegitimate Panda. Thinking of things, frankly, you never considered.
I'm surprised it's not the 666. Speaking of churches.
And now, back to Light Talk.
Well, the sound of those crazy ducks tells us that it's time for another installment of Let's Talk About. And today's Let's Talk About is all about what factors do you consider when you and your colleagues decide what scripts to choose for your class projects and for productions in an academic theater season.
That is a loaded topic. and maybe you need to just break that up into pieces like Biden. Let's do this first and then let's do that next because...
Well, there are two obvious ones because you've got your class projects. It usually could maybe just be for one designer's designing this head of goblet, right? Another designer's designing a head of goblet, but they're going to design it differently. And then for productions, there are laboratory experiences, not only for the designers, but also for the actors and directors, all students usually, and also for an audience. So to me, it's two different things here. I think that's all grounded in one philosophy, is that no matter what you decide to do, that it has to be a benefit of the students. That being said, what factors do you guys use to make these decisions in both classes and in productions?
Do you want honesty?
Yes. We are all about honesty. This is Light Talk. This is Beaver Junction, Arkansas.
Now we're in the confessional at the church. Wow. Let Steve go first.
Well, I mean, I think I've got a list here, but the first thing is material. Is the material serving the academic needs of the students? Over the last 10 years, really, we have looked at new work. We have looked at work by playwrights who are, as we say, not dead and under 30. What stories are we telling? It doesn't do any good to do, a radical statement here. I'm at a university. It does no good for us to do something like Hello, Dolly. And we have 18 and 19-year-olds trying to pretend they're 50-year-olds. Are we doing things that are appropriate for that person at this point in their journey to becoming an actor? And again, for us, it's not about selling tickets. And for most universities, it's not about selling tickets. It's about the journey of the actor and the journey of the designer and how they're perfecting their craft as they move forward. The Hello Dollies will come to the 18-year-olds 20 years from now, maybe. So material, that's my first litmus test when we look at the season.
I think Steve says that really well. Same here. And we've been doing new work almost always since I've been here, there's a new work or a developed piece in at least one in every season. But I think the rub that we have a little bit, and we're pushing up against this, and I'm just going to say this because you said you swore me to honesty. My program has been, I want to say, performer biased, whereas the power structures were what served the performers, and the designers would just sort of do whatever it was that was there, and that has now starting to shift, where it also has to that the considerations of what's going to help the designers grow and what's in their interest is because there's a lot of talk about equity at my institution right now, and so it has not been equitable. So it's nice to see that shift and putting the students first, and not the director or the choreographer, but thinking about, and not just the performance students, but the designers and the technologists all get a meaningful educational experience. So I agree with Steve on that, and I would just add that as a confessional in terms of how we are growing and expanding, and our thinking is changing.
Well, the first thing in that is changing the culture of the university so that designers and technicians are not there in service.
That's right.
Of the acting program.
That's right.
Well, that's a battle that's been going on for many, many, many years, unfortunately. Not everywhere.
I think in this particular time in history where there's a larger national conversation about equity and inclusion, So it falls under that umbrella, and so I think it has more agency now, David, than it's had in the past.
Well, that brings me to the second thing, which is budgets. And there was a time when I came into SMU, there was that period between when you had been there and when I had gotten there, and that kind of no man's land of no designers in the building. I noticed. I was looking at a budget sheet that had something like $40,000 on it, and the theater had produced 15 shows. And I'm going, how did this happen? And you start really digging into it, and you see blue jeans and white shirts and rehearsal skirts. And all of a sudden, they didn't want to put the money into building and producing a show. They wanted to make it more opportunity for acting students as opposed to a balance for everybody. So I think budgets, this idea of if we're going to do this particular show, then we have to accept that there's going to be some cost to it. Or if we're going to do that particular show, then okay, I can see where the cost isn't going to be so great. But universities have to be willing to spend the money to do the type of show they should be doing if they're producing it.
These are really great points, guys. But I want to move now to another consideration. And that is, yes, we are doing the show to help train our students, whether they're designers, actors, directors, right? But what is our service to the audience? We have a conscripted audience, by the way. Every student that is required to take like beginning acting or any of our gen ed classes has to subscribe to our season, right? Because our season is part of their learning process, because we talk about the shows and classes and they get to see the show produced. So it is actually a valid learning experience for students who aren't even theater majors. So we do have a duty to produce shows that students will relate to. And then I said something pretty radical in a meeting last semester where they were talking about season selection and why, there were a lot of complaints about not doing shows that these students care about. And I've always believed that we should be doing shows that students want to do, that they want to say something about them. And I have changed a lot of my project shows to shows that are a lot more current to what's happening in the world. I've always done that anyway, but now they're much more contemporary. They're more contemporary shows. But I think that students should help choose these shows that are produced in the theater department. And so that we've started that as well. Before we'd have like one or two token students there and then you have a bunch of acting teachers and maybe a design teacher. I think that's totally wrong. I think it needs to go the other way. I think you need like one person, one faculty member from every area. So that's 3 or 4 at the most. And then you should have like 5 or 6 students. And I think that it should be a student-driven thing. But again, that's only one philosophy. I'm not saying that's the philosophy, but it's something that needs to be considered when we choose shows for production for the season. What do you guys think about that?
Let me ask a question, David. We have a committee. I'm sure this, as you guys do too, and we've always had student members, and this year a lot of the folks who sort of had the power are either retired or gone. And so it's a whole new team at UF, including the chair of the committee now, who's chair this year, the faculty, the students, and we've shifted to which something I was pushing for several years, is now we're selecting 2 seasons at a time. There are some complications with getting the rights that far in advance and so on, but we're selecting 2 seasons at a time, and the students are really participating. And I think the stuff that came out this year was really pretty terrific, and the students had a lot of buy-in. And there was a classic play that I put in, but I didn't want it to be done in a classic style. I thought the themes were open to modern issues. If the director, and no director stepped forward yet, has been assigned, but it's a very democratic process now at UF, and it used to be a democratic process as window dressing. but it really wasn't a democratic process.
Yeah.
Now
Yeah, that was the case we had. There was a
Right.
window dressing. Now,
Yeah.
now it's different.
And I would say now it truly was democratic, and our chair is committed to it being democratic. For example, the musical is usually the person who directs musicals or runs the musical theater program usually would choose the title, and there was no veto power. The committee was just like, okay. He said, and this year the committee chose the musical, and the music director sort of pushed back, and the chair, bless his heart, said, you know what? This is a democratic process, and this is not about everybody has to be the right casting, and it's not to make the show the best show we can make. It's to give the best learning experience we can, and that's what the committee came up with. And the committee had its criteria and tough noogies.
I'm not saying this is the case, but you get that when you have a bunch of acting teachers and musical directors who have no professional gigs right now. So this is the way they get their creative juices done. So they do the shows they want to do, which is really against the whole philosophy of doing the show for the benefit of the student.
I'm going to defend the musical director here. I think you have to be careful when you're selecting musicals or you're selecting opera. And do you have the students in the building who are capable of doing it?
Right, that's what he.
So I mean,
that's what they
it's
would
like
say.
announcing
That's right.
we're going to do 42nd Street and no one's ever tapped in their lives.
Yeah.
Right.
But then
So
again, on the play devil's
Triangle.
Devil's
Triangle.
advocate,
Devil's
Devil's
Triad. Devil's Triad. I like that.
to play devil's
There's the title
advocate,
for the
Steve.
show. Devil's Triad.
What is wrong with giving the students an experience of learning how to dance, right? It goes back to that experience I had with a chair at SMU when I taught there, when this chair was complaining that there were some missed light cues on opening night and that the stage manager should be fired. This is a student, 18-year-old stage manager, and I need to do something about that, being head of design. And however, there was no problem with that 18-year-old acting student who skipped 3 lines of text.
Right.
So, you talk about equity between acting students and design students and technical students, and I called this chair out on it. I called them out on it. It just pissed me off. I wasn't going to fire someone because they were learning.
How can you fire them? They pay your salary. don't they?
Exactly.
Well, I don't think we fire students.
Right.
Maybe if we're at the Guthrie Theater, we fire somebody, but not when they're in an academic world trying to learn. Mistakes are going to be made, and sometimes that's a way of learning.
That's right. And that actor learned that also, and the actors around that actor learned how to recover from a mistake like that.
I think the difference here, if I can add some texture, yes, I think Steve's point is well taken. You don't want to necessarily do a show that you don't have anywhere near the correct talent for. But when the director comes in and offers only one title, that's not democracy. That's dictatorship. So if you're the music director, come with 3 titles that you think your corral of talent can do, not just one.
Yeah, so we have a mixture of faculty. We have an undergraduate, a graduate actor, and a graduate designer on the committee to represent everyone.
What's your submission process like? Can students submit a play
Of
and
course.
fill out the form?
Of course. And we
Great.
get everything from something that, I'm just going to say it. We get everything from something that's reasonable to someone who says, let's do Hadestown. Well, let's wait till it closes on Broadway. So, we get a wide range of stuff that comes in. And at the end of the day, it's a discussion about what the freshmen need, what the sophomore, the juniors and seniors need, and what the graduate students need. It's the same way that we work with designers. All of a sudden, if this person's been doing contemporary drama and they've been going to, Salvation Army to get sofas, then it's time for them to do something that's completely built and out of their wheelhouse, I guess it is.
See, I've got the Devil's Triangle, you've got the Lighthouse.
No, you have the Devil's Triad. Let's take the nuclear triad. I like that Devil's Triad.
So Steve has our last question.
It is Emma in Texas, and she writes, and I like this question a lot.
I do too. I'm really curious for the answer.
Steve Terry would like it even more. So we may have to wait for Steve to weigh in. Why can't DMX use just one wire, just like the telegraph does?
Yeah, Steve, why can't it?
Well, first of all, two obvious questions. Are you too cheap to buy cable that's got 2 wires in it or 3 wires?
Well, I actually have 5 wires in it.
Why do you need one wire? But I think There's two reasons. One, I think it'd be nice to complete a circuit. And second, there's a lot more information flowing over a DMX cable than there ever was on a telegraph cable.
Yeah, but why 2 wires? Complete the circuit.
Well, I mean, I can go here to Wikipedia and read what Wikipedia says. But, that doesn't serve any purpose. Emma can look it up. Stan, you're just dying to answer the question.
No, I don't. I know. I'm dying to know I'm actually curious to know the answer because it's binary code, right? That's being sent over the wire. So it's packets of voltages. Does it need a neutral? Does it need a second wire? I don't really know the answer. So I'm curious.
Don't look at me, guys.
Okay, I have the answer. So DMX is a balanced 3-wire system. 2 wires carry the data signals, okay, plus and minus, and 1 wire is the common reference. So Emma, it needs 3 wires, and Steve is right. You have to it is a circuit, and that's why.
And when DMX, when 5-pin came out, it was still only 3 pins that were working. The 2 extra pins in there were for future expansion.
Or spares, right? There's
could be a spare, sure.
Right, and actually another reason that I remember hearing back in the day was that you can run DMX on 3 wires, but in clubs, most of the audio cable is for balanced signals is 3 wires, and you didn't want to have somebody making the mistake of plugging DMX into sound or sound into DMX and burning things up. So there was sort of a safety measure there as well. Of why we use the 5-pin. You can use 3-pin. Some old like disco fixtures are 3-pin DMX. So people would say, oh, but I can use my 3-pin cables for both my sound and my lighting. Yeah, but that lays a potential for all kinds of.
Sure, I mean it can be used. It's just not suggested.
Right, exactly.
It's not a good idea to do that.
No.
Also, it seems to me that DMX is 120 ohms. And sound cable XLR is not rated for 120. What happens is you get interruptions with the XLR cable. So if you're sending a strobe or a lobstering effect, the XLR can't handle the transmission of that voltage.
Because the XLR is higher ohms, more resistance.
Right.
Yeah.
Everything you ever want to know about DMX on our show.
Nobody cares about this, but
I don't care about DMX.
Emma does.
So Emma, listen in next week, and what's going to happen is Steve Terry is going to weigh in. He's probably clutching his chest right now, going, "There's a DMX question. I feel it floating in the ether."
We don't know the answer to this.
Oh, poor Steve! Once again, drawn out of the
Okay, I'm going to wager. I'm going to throw down the gauntlet at Steve Terry. I bet he can answer Emma's question in less than 15 words.
1 sentence. He can do it in 1 sentence.
Well, one sentence could be like a lot. I think.
Could come as a cameo.
But
you should. Okay, let's call Steve up. See if we can get a cameo and have him answer this question.
But we found the answer.
Yes, but we sound like idiots explaining it.
No,
That's right.
I'll do it again. DMX is a balanced 3-wire system. 2 wires carry the data, and 1 wire acts as common reference.
There you go.
Okay, it's simple. There's plus and minus data and a neutral, right?
Didn't seem that simple 10 minutes ago.
No, I was confused. I had to look it up.
Good. Hey, students learn from Stan. Look it up. Do your research.
That's right.
Well, the rocking sounds of the Luminoids tells us that once again you've spent another morning listening to Light Talk. You can hear our show on Spotify, iTunes, livedesignonline.com, Google, YouTube, and just about every podcast site out there. Check out our website at lighttalk.org for future guests, and be sure to follow us on Facebook and subscribe to our podcast. That way you will not miss a second of Light Talk Insanity.
No guarantee is offered regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on this podcast.
Especially DMX.
However, if you litigate us with the Devil's Triad,
and
the
DMX
law firm of Flex, Flux, Flare, and the Glare, and their paralegal snoot will defend us until our retirement funds are depleted.
Light Talk is written and produced by the Lumen Brothers, coming to you from Long Beach, Gainesville, and from deep in the heart of Texas.
And be sure to join us next week when we talk about more crazy happenings with DMX, the Devil's Triad, and our crazy industry.
And a new sponsor.
Light Talk, broadcasting questionable Lumen knowledge and humor around the world.
So we'll see you all next Saturday morning when we broadcast live from Beaver Junction. Bye-bye from Light Talk.
Toodles.
Beavers.
Light Talk.